Someone sits in a church pew every Sunday for 40 years, serves on committees, volunteers at every event, prays faithfully, yet still wonders if they've done enough to secure their spot in whatever comes next. They look at the pastor, the bishop, the cardinals, and wonder if those people have a better shot at eternal happiness. That's not peace. That's spiritual anxiety wearing religious clothing. Here's what nobody wants to admit out loud. The very structures we've built to bring us closer to the divine might actually be pushing us further away from what truly matters. We're talking about hierarchies in the church and how they shape not just our Sunday mornings, but our entire understanding of existence, meaning, and what happens when this life ends. And the truth is, these sacred ladders come with consequences that ripple through our present reality and into whatever lies beyond. Part 1. The weight we carry. The question isn't whether hierarchies exist in religious institutions. They do, and they always have. The real question is what these structures are doing to the human beings caught inside them, both the ones climbing the ladder and the ones standing at the bottom looking up. Because here's the thing. When we organise spirituality like a corporate structure, we inevitably inherit the same problems that plague every organisation built on power differentials, and those problems cut deep. Part 2. When power corrupts the sacred. Let's start with the most painful reality: abuse. When power concentrates in the hands of a few religious leaders, and when those leaders operate in a system that makes them nearly untouchable, the potential for harm becomes staggering. We've seen it play out in headlines that shake our faith in institutions we thought were safe. Sexual abuse, emotional manipulation, spiritual coercion, these are common in hierarchical systems. They're predictable outcomes when human beings gain unchecked authority and face little to no accountability. The devastating part isn't just the abuse itself, it's what happens next. Hierarchical structures often prioritise protecting the institution's reputation over protecting the victims. The ladder becomes more important than the people climbing it. Leaders close ranks, shuffle problematic figures to different locations, and victims find themselves facing a wall of bureaucracy and denial that feels impenetrable. This isn't theoretical, this is the lived experience of thousands who trusted their spiritual leaders and ended up betrayed by the very system designed to nurture their souls. And here's where it connects to your life right now. Even if you've never experienced this kind of abuse directly, it creates a culture of mistrust that poisons the well for everyone. When the news breaks about another scandal, another cover-up, another leader who violated the sacred trust placed in them, it doesn't just affect the direct victims. It sends shockwaves throughout entire communities. People who spent decades building their lives around their faith suddenly find themselves asking, what else have I been wrong about? Who can I actually trust? The disillusionment is breathtaking in its scope. Part 3. The illusion of spiritual classes. Then there's the insidious problem of clericalism. This is the idea that ordained leaders are somehow spiritually superior to everyone else. It's subtle, but it's there. The special robes, the reserved seats, the deference, the assumption that clergy members have a hotline to the divine that regular believers just don't possess. And on the flip side, lay people start to feel like second-class citizens in their own spiritual communities. This contradicts something fundamental that echoes throughout religious teachings: the concept of servanthood, humility, equality before the divine. Jesus washed feet. The Buddha rejected the caste system. Muhammad declared that no Arab has superiority over a non-Arab. Yet people over time have recreated the very hierarchies these teachings challenged. We've built spiritual ladders where some people get closer to truth, while others are told to stay in their designated spots and let the professionals handle the heavy lifting. The psychological impact is profound. When believers feel marginalised in their own communities, when they're treated like cogs in a religious machine, rather than essential participants in a shared spiritual journey, something breaks. There is a sense of profound loneliness and alienation. The believers stop bringing their gifts, their questions, their unique perspectives. The community becomes poorer for it, but more importantly, individuals lose their sense of agency in their own spiritual lives. They outsource their connection to the divine, assuming the people at the top of the hierarchy have it figured out while they're just along for the ride. Part 4. The stagnation of sacred spaces. Here's another stunning consequence. Hierarchies kill innovation and diversity of thought. When decision-making power rests with a small group of like-minded individuals, often older men who've been shaped by the same institutional forces, you get an echo chamber. New ideas get dismissed. Different perspectives get marginalised. The creative prophetic voices that might challenge the status quo and breathe fresh life into ancient wisdom get silenced or pushed out. This matters more than you might think. Because reality is complex, consciousness is mysterious, and existence raises questions that don't have simple answers. We need diverse voices wrestling with these deep truths. We need the wisdom of women and men, young and old, different cultures and experiences, all contributing to our collective understanding of what it means to be human and spiritual. But rigid hierarchies create bottlenecks that filter out anything that doesn't fit the approved narrative. Part 5. The Afterlife Anxiety Machine. Now let's talk about what might be even more disturbing, how hierarchical thinking infects our understanding of what comes after death. Some religious traditions teach that heaven itself is hierarchical. They say that there are different levels, different rewards, different degrees of closeness to the divine based on how well you performed in this life. And while that might sound fair on the surface, the psychological consequences are jarring. Imagine believing that eternity is graded, that your forever is somehow lesser than someone else's forever, because you didn't pray enough, serve enough, or sacrifice enough. The anxiety this creates isn't just about the afterlife. It bleeds into every moment of your current existence. You're not living. You're auditioning, you're not serving out of love. You're collecting points, you're not experiencing grace. You're calculating whether you've earned enough to avoid eternal regret. This is the opposite of peace. This is a spiritual rat race that never ends, even in death. People become consumed with competition, comparing their righteousness to others, constantly worried they're falling behind in some cosmic ranking system. And the tragic irony is that this anxiety-driven approach to spirituality often contradicts the very teachings it claims to follow, including teachings about unconditional love, freely given grace, and the inherent worth of every soul. Part 6. The Eternal Regret Problem. Here's where it gets even darker. If heaven is hierarchical, then even in paradise there's the potential for dissatisfaction. Imagine spending eternity wondering what you could have done differently to earn a better spot. Imagine being saved, but still feeling like you missed out because someone else has a better view, a closer proximity to the divine, a higher rank in the celestial organization chart. This completely warps the meaning of salvation. It shifts the focus from relationship to performance, from being to doing, from grace to merit, and it raises uncomfortable questions about divine justice that can shake a person's entire worldview. Why would a loving God make a system where some saved souls have it better than others for eternity? What does that say about fairness, about mercy, about the nature of divine love? If the afterlife is meant to be the ultimate restoration of all that was broken, how can it include a system that mirrors the very inequalities that cause so much pain on earth? Part 7. The Hidden Cost to Your Soul. So, why should any of this matter to you right now in your current life? Because these hierarchical structures and beliefs don't just affect abstract theological debates, they shape how you see yourself, how you relate to your community, how you understand your worth, and how you approach the ultimate questions of existence and meaning. If you've ever felt like you're not religious enough, if you've ever compared your spirituality to someone else's and found yourself lacking, or if you've ever felt anxiety about whether you're doing enough to secure your eternal future, then these are the fingerprints of hierarchical thinking on your consciousness, and recognizing them is the first step toward freedom. The alternative isn't chaos or the absence of structure. It's a different kind of organization, one that emphasizes mutual accountability rather than top-down control, one that recognizes the priesthood of all believers rather than creating spiritual classes, one that focuses on grace and relationship rather than rank and performance. Part 8. The Freedom of a Flat Kingdom. Breaking away from these hierarchical mindsets is not just a theological shift, it is a path to psychological freedom. When we stop viewing religion as a pyramid and start seeing it as a circle, everything changes. In a circle, everyone is equidistant from the center. There is no up or down, only toward or away. This realization is liberating. It allows for a community where accountability is shared and where every voice has a unique and notable value. It removes the sickening pressure to perform and replaces it with the simple, marvelous joy of being. We begin to understand that the truth of our existence isn't found in our rank, but in our capacity to love and be loved. The same applies to our vision of what comes next. If we can let go of the idea of a tiered heaven, we can find a sense of peace that is truly extraordinary. We can stop worrying about our rewards and start focusing on the beauty of the gift itself. This shifts our focus from earning to experiencing. It allows us to view God not as a judge with a clipboard, but as the source of a reality that is far more spectacular than any human hierarchy could ever imagine. This is the secret to a life lived without the shadow of eternal regret. It is the realization that in the eyes of the infinite, there are no second-class souls. Part 9. The Path Forward. The stunning truth is that questioning these hierarchies isn't an attack on faith. It's often the most spiritual thing a person can do. It's asking whether our structures actually serve the divine purposes they claim to serve, or whether they've become ends unto themselves, protecting power and privilege, rather than nurturing souls and seeking truth. This matters because your spiritual life shouldn't feel like climbing a ladder, where one wrong step means falling and failing forever. Your relationship with the divine, with meaning, with existence itself, shouldn't be mediated through layers of bureaucracy that may or may not have your best interests at heart. And your hope for whatever comes after this life shouldn't be poisoned by anxiety about whether you've earned enough points to avoid eternal regret. Hierarchies in the church and the afterlife aren't just institutional problems. They're deeply personal challenges that affect how millions of people experience their faith, their communities, and their understanding of ultimate reality. And recognizing this is how we start building something better, including something that actually reflects the radical equality, unconditional love, and transformative grace that spirituality at its best is supposed to offer. The benefit of viewing the world this way is a life defined by authenticity rather than competition. It is the end of the exhausting climb and the beginning of a genuine exploration of consciousness. When we strip away these human-made hierarchical structures, we are left with something much more valuable, which is a direct, unmediated connection to the truth. We'll discover that the most phenomenal experiences in life don't happen at the top of a mountain, but in the quiet valleys where we finally stop trying to be more and simply accept that we are enough. This is the ultimate reality, and it is more beautiful and more inclusive than any hierarchy could ever permit.